There's a kind of discipline that never breaks, not when you're exhausted, not when everything goes wrong, not when you want to give up. And today you'll discover the ancient system that creates unbreakable warriors. Have you ever wondered how shinobi managed to survive alone for months in the mountains? How they trained in secret for years without anyone knowing? How they maintained absolute discipline without apps, reminders, or motivational coaching? The answer has nothing to do with willpower. It has to do with something they called Ninpo, the way of the invisible warrior. And when you understand the 5 pillars of this system, you realize that the discipline you've tried to build up until now was built on sand. The shinobi understood something about human beings that modern science only discovered years later. Their brains weren't designed for discipline. They were designed for survival. And that's precisely why their systems work when everything else fails. But it comes at a price. This path doesn't accept those who just want to try. It demands sacrifice of the weak version of you that trades on your own words. Before I show you how this system works in practice, I invite you to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and activate the notification bell so you don't miss future content. Thank you very much for your attention. Back to the video. Chapter 1. The Failed Boy Feudal Japan, Eager Prefecture, 1540. There was a 14-year-old boy named Tishi, whom everyone in the village knows by the wrong nickname, Tishi the Lazy. This kid had dreamed of being a shinobi ever since he first saw the silhouettes moving across the rooftops at night. But he had one huge problem. He was pathetic. He woke up every day promising to train. Today, I'll start. I'd do 3 push-ups, get tired, go eat. I'd promise to meditate. I'd sit for 2 minutes. My mind wandered. I'd get up. I'd vow to practice with the wooden sword. I'd strike 5 times. My arms would ache and I'd stop. The pattern was always the same. Monday morning. Today is the day. Monday afternoon. Maybe tomorrow will be better. Tuesday. I completely forgot I had promised anything. His father was a blacksmith, a practical man, calloused hands and no patience for dreams. Tishi, shinobi are legends. Ghosts parents invent to scare children. You will learn my trade and stop this nonsense. Tishi's father knew that shinobi existed. He also knew that there was a secret school in the mountains. He knew the location of this school, but he never revealed the location to his son and always pretended not to believe this story because he didn't trust his son and wanted him to get this stupid idea out of his head. But Tishi couldn't stop. Every night he looked up at the mountains where the secret school stood. Every morning he woke up thinking, what if I really try this time? And every afternoon he gave up again until the day everything changed, but not in the way he imagined. Tishi was returning from the forest after another day of training, 20 minutes of playing with twigs, when he saw a man standing in the middle of the path. An ordinary guy, plain clothes, nothing special except for his eyes. Those eyes seemed to see right through him. You want to be a shinobi? It wasn't a question, it was a statement. Tishi felt his blood run cold. I was just... You were wasting time again. The man took 2 steps forward. How many times did you promise yourself today would be different? Silence. Because Tishi knew the answer. Hundreds, maybe thousands. Come with me. The man turned and began walking toward the mountains. If you can keep up with me, I'll show you where the school is. If not, you go home and accept that you'll be a blacksmith for the rest of your life. Tishi looked up at the mountain. 3 hours of steep climbing. He'd never been able to do anything for 3 hours straight in his entire life. But something about that moment was different. Maybe it was the brutal clarity in the man's voice. Maybe it was the fact that this was probably his only chance. Or maybe it was simply that he was tired of being weak. I go. The first 20 minutes were bearable. At 40, my legs started burning. An hour into the climb, my mind started screaming the same old excuses. This is crazy. You're not cut out for this. Come back tomorrow. But the man kept walking without looking back, without slowing down, without saying anything. 2 hours later, Tishi was crawling, hands and knees on the ground, tears in his eyes, his whole body screaming for him to stop. And in that moment, he understood something that would change everything. The pain didn't matter. The fatigue didn't matter. What mattered was the decision he'd made down there at the trailhead. He'd said he would, and warriors keep their word. Tishi managed to get up and continued walking. 3 hours and 15 minutes later, Tishi reached the top. He fell to his knees, vomited, and passed out. When he woke up, he was inside a temple. Dark wooden walls, the smell of incense, absolute silence. The man was sitting in front of him. You completed the first lesson of Ninpo without even knowing it. Welcome to the Koga School. Chapter 2. The Death of the Weak Self. Tishi woke before dawn to a bell ringing. Not a gentle alarm clock, a bronze bell that seemed to vibrate inside his skull. He looked around. 15 other young men were already standing, wearing identical dark clothes, staring straight ahead. The master, the same mountain man, stood in the center of the hall. In NPO, there are no attempts. There are only 2 states. You are or you are not. From that moment on, you are students. Students wake up when the bell rings. No negotiation. Tishi looked out the window. It was still dark. But sensei, what time? The master cut him with a look that could melt metal. Questions are thoughts. Thoughts create hesitation. Hesitation creates death. The bell rings. You wake. The end. The first week was torture. The bell rang early. Meditation in absolute silence for an hour. Brutal physical training for 2 hours. Strategy study for another 2. Practice stealth techniques until dusk. Sleep. Repeat. Tishi wanted to give up every single day. But here was the difference. He couldn't. Because in Nino, when you walk through the door, you don't make a commitment to yourself. You make an oath in front of everyone. On the first day, each student had to stand before the entire community and declare, I am a student of the ninja way. My word is my life. If I break my word, I am nothing. The entire school witnessed it. 15 other students heard it. The teacher recorded it in a book. Identity changed in that moment. Do you understand what happened there? Tishi didn't promise to try. He declared himself. And when your identity changes publicly, your primitive brain interprets failure as social extinction. Our ancestors who lost the trust of their tribe died. They were expelled. They couldn't survive alone. Your brain still works exactly this way. When you declare something publicly or to yourself and fail, an ancient part of your brain interprets it as a threat to survival. Shinobi knew this hundreds of years before neuroscience existed. I'm not saying they understood it scientifically, but I'm saying they understood it philosophically. Their philosophy was, don't break your oath. On the 3rd day, Tishi woke up with his body wrecked. Every muscle screamed. His mind immediately began, you're hurt. You need rest. One day won't make a difference. He looked around. All the other students were already on their feet. No one was complaining. No one was negotiating. And most importantly, if he stayed down, it wouldn't just be him knowing he'd failed. It would be everyone. The shame of breaking the oath in front of everyone was infinitely stronger than the physical pain. He stood up. 5th night during dinner, one of the students whispered, Man, we can't do this. This pace is going to kill us. The master heard. He stood up. Take your things away. You're expelled. The boy turned white. But I didn't do anything. I just said, you have sworn doubt. Doubt is poison. In Ninpo, thoughts are actions. You have acted against your oath. Leave. The student left. He never came back. And no one at the school ever complained again because everyone understood the oath was not decoration. It was the structure that supported everything. But Tishi soon discovered that the oath only solved half the problem. Because even with the social pressure, even with the fear of expulsion, he was still fighting an internal war every single day. It was then that the master taught the second pillar of NPOYE, the principle of unchanging rhythm. Chapter 3. The rhythm that doesn't break. You know that silent torture that plays out in your head every morning. Should I work out now or after breakfast? Should I wake up at 5 or 6? Should I do it today or tomorrow when I have more energy? You think you're being flexible. In reality, you're wasting mental energy on micro-decisions that weaken you before you even begin. The master called Tishi after 2 weeks. You're still hesitating. I see it in your eyes every morning. Tishi was surprised. But sensei, I get up every day. I've never failed. Standing up is not enough. You are still deciding whether to stand up. As long as there is decision, there is weakness. We must kill decision. The master explained, in true NPO, time is not variable. It is constant. The bell rings in the morning because the universe needs constants. When you remove time as a variable, you remove negotiation. Your body is stupid, said the master, but it's a stupid body that learns patterns. If you wake up at a different time every day, your body never knows what to expect. It fights you every time. But when the time is the same every day, your body starts preparing itself before the bell even rings. Tishi didn't believe it until the 3rd week. On the 19th, he woke up shortly before the bell. His body had learned to do so. On the 25th, his eyes opened naturally 2 minutes earlier. On the 30th, he was fully awake, feet on the ground, mind clear before any sound. His body had created an internal clock, not because he was special, because the pattern was unbreakable, but the fixed schedule only resolved when to wake up. Tishi discovered a new battlefield. What to do during training? Some days he wanted to focus more on strength, others on speed. Sometimes he felt inspired to go rock climbing. Other times he wanted to work on sword techniques. His mind had found a new opening for negotiation. Since he couldn't argue about when to train, he began to argue about how to train. The master saw this too. You are creating chaos where there should be form. In NPO, we practice kata, perfect form, repeated endlessly. And then he explained something that sounded like insanity. For 100 days, you will do exactly the same training sequence, same movements, same order, same number of repetitions. No variation. 0. Tishi was confused. But sensei, won't I get bored? Won't I stop evolving? Boredom is the ego-resisting transformation, and you only evolve when the practice becomes so automatic that your consciousness can finally observe the invisible details. Chapter 4. The form that frees. I'll tell you what no one tells you about variety. You think variety keeps things interesting. But variety is actually where discipline dies. Every day you change your workout. Your brain has to make micro-decisions. Should I squat or run today? How long should I spend on each exercise? Which technique should I practice first? Every decision is a crack where your old patterns leak back in. Tishi began his personal shuyo period, 100 days in the same way. The sequence was brutal. 50 push-ups, 100 squats, 30 minutes of sword practice following specific kata, 20 minutes of breathing techniques, the same order, the same place, the same time, every single day. First week, his mind screamed for novelty. This is stupid. You're human, not a machine. Vary things, or you'll go crazy. By the second week, the other students were starting to comment, "Man, you're turning into a robot." Where's the creativity, the self-expression? The master listened and laughed. Creativity without foundation is just organized chaos. You want to express yourself. First, master the form. Only then will you have something to express. The third week was pure psychological warfare. Every day, Tishi had to fight the voice that said, "Do something different today, just for today, just so it doesn't get boring." But he remembered the student who was expelled. He remembered the oath. He continued the form. In the 4th week, something strange started to happen. Mental stamina weakened. Not because Tishi got stronger, because stamina wears out faster than discipline. His brain realized he had no available trade. No matter how many times I screamed for variation, the answer was always the same: no. Eventually, the brain stopped screaming. Week 6 was when the magic happened. Tishi was mid-push-ups when he realized he wasn't thinking. His body was moving through the sequence on its own, like water flowing along the route it always had. It wasn't boredom. It was freedom. Freedom from the tyranny of constant decision-making. 8th week during sword practice, he noticed for the first time a microscopic detail in his wrist movement, something that would have been impossible to see if his mind had been busy deciding which technique to practice. The master was watching. Now you see, when form becomes automatic, consciousness can finally pay attention. A neuroscientist at Kyoto University, who has been studying the automation of behavior for 18 years, has discovered something revolutionary. When you repeat an exact sequence of actions for approximately 66 days in the same context, the basal ganglia take over control of the movement. The prefrontal cortex is freed up for higher functions. The behavior becomes as automatic as breathing. On the 45th, Tishi developed a fever. His body was weak. His head was heavy. Everything hurt. The temptation was obvious. I'll skip today. No one trains when they're sick. I'll come back tomorrow when I'm better. This is where everyone gives up. Where you gave up before because you believe the all or nothing lie. If I can't do it perfectly, I don't do it at all. If I can't do it completely, I wait until I can. This logic seems sensible, but it's actually the silent killer of any consistency you've ever tried to create. Tishi went to his master. "Sensei, I'm sick. Should I rest today?" The master looked at him as if he'd said the most idiotic thing in the world. Rest is different from giving up. If you need true rest, rest. But you're not asking about rest. You're asking for permission to create a gap. What's the difference? A river never stops flowing. During a drought, it becomes a trickle. During a storm, it becomes a torrent, but it never stops. The moment it stops, it is no longer a river. It is just a hole where the water used to be. Your practice is the same. And then the master taught the 3rd pillar of Ninpo-muku. Practice without gaps. Are you feeling weak today? Do 10 push-ups instead of 50? Meditate for 5 minutes instead of 20. But do something, because momentum is more valuable than perfection. Tishi did half the normal training. It was horrible. It was imperfect. It was completely sufficient because he maintained momentum. He didn't create a gap. The next day, when the fever subsided, his body returned to full training as if nothing had happened. If he had jumped completely, his body would have interpreted it as a change in pattern. It would have resisted the next day. Well, you jumped yesterday. Why not jump today too? But because he never created the gap, the pattern remained intact. Day 70. Massive storm. The training hall flooded. Tishi thought he finally had a legitimate excuse. He sought out his master. "Sensei, where do we train today?" The master pointed to the covered patio. "There, but it's raining." The sensei replied, "So what? Do you think enemies only attack on sunny days? Do you think missions only happen when you're comfortable?" Tishi trained in the rain. Soaked clothes, slippery ground, bone-chilling cold. But he trained without a break. Chapter 5. The Invisible Preparation. But Tishi was about to discover something that nearly broke him. Because no matter how strong your oath, how fixed your schedule, how perfect your form, there's one kind of obstacle that knocks everyone down. The obstacle you didn't see coming. Day 80. Tishi's father showed up at school. Family emergency. He needed to return to the village immediately. Tishi panicked, not because of the emergency, but because of his training. 20 days to go until the 100 days. If he broke now, The master stopped him before he could speak. Do you think obstacles ask permission? Do you think life respects your 100 days? But sensei, I promised to complete. You promised to practice without gaps. You didn't promise it would be convenient. This is your true test. Not when everything is perfect, but when everything goes wrong. And then the master taught the fourth pillar, Zini, prior preparation. Al-Shinobi is never caught off guard because he has already decided his answers before the questions arise. When X happens, he does Y without thinking, without hesitation. He just executes. The master had Tishi sit down and list every possible obstacle: travel, illness, visitor, emergency, extreme weather, injury. For each one, they wrote down the exact answer. Traveling pre-dawn road, workout sick? Half the reps. Arm injury, focus on the legs. Rain-covered patio, family emergency. Essential 15-minute workout. Teshi returned to the village he spent 3 days helping his family, but every day at 4 a.m. He woke up. He did a condensed version, 20 push-ups, 10 minutes of meditation, basic sword cutter. The neighbors thought he had lost his mind. Your father needs help, and you're playing with a sword at 4 a.m. But Tishi understood something they never would. He was helping his father all day. Morning training didn't take anything away from that. It kept his identity intact so he could be strong for his family. He returned to school on day 83. The teacher asked, "How many days did you miss?" "None, sensei." The master smiled for the first time. "Now you're beginning to understand." A behavioral psychologist at the University of Tokyo, who has been studying decision-making for 22 years, found when you pre-decide your actions, you remove decision fatigue from the critical moment. Your prefrontal cortex, responsible for willpower, remains intact to execute rather than decide. This can increase your success rate by up to 300%. Day 95, 5 days to go until the 100 days of Shugyo? Tishi was different. Everyone at school noticed. He didn't talk about training. He simply trained. He didn't promise to wake up early. He simply woke up. He didn't need motivation. The practice happened on its own. The other students began to whisper, "How does he do it? How does he never fail?" One of the older students replied, "He doesn't. He is." Day 100 arrived. Tishi completed the sequence for the 100th consecutive time. No flaws, no gaps, no exceptions. The bell rang, marking the end of the Shuyo. He expected to feel relief. He expected to want to celebrate, but he felt only silence. A deep, strange silence. The master called him. "How do you feel?" "Empty, sensei, but not in a bad way. Like something heavy has been lifted off." What came out was the version of you that needed to decide. Now you have reached the 5th pillar of NPO, Mushin, the mindless mind. Chapter 6. The mind that doesn't hesitate. Mushin means no mind, the master explained, but it doesn't mean stupidity. It means no ego, no hesitation, no inner conflict between what you should do and what you want to do. When a samurai attacks you with a sword, you don't have time to think, should I dodge or block? If you think you die, the response must be automatic, instantaneous, without the interference of the hesitating ego. This is what you built in those 100 days, not just a workout habit. You killed the part of you that negotiates with yourself. Tishi understood. In the past 30 days, he hadn't had a single thought about trading. No. What if I jumped today? No. Maybe tomorrow would be better. The practice simply happened like a heart beating, like lungs breathing. The master continued. Now comes the real test. Your 100 days are over. The fixed form is over. The question is, will you return to who you were, or have you become something different? Tishi didn't need to think. I'll continue. Why? because I'm no longer someone who trains. I'm someone who is. The master nodded. Welcome to true Ninpo. 3 months later, Tishi was no longer a student. He was a shinobi, not because he received a certificate, because something fundamental in his structure had changed. His discipline frightened the other students. He never talked about training, never complained, never negotiated. He was simply the kind of person who got things done. One day, a new student asked, "How do you manage to never fail?" Tishi gave the same answer his master had given him. Failure is no longer an option in my mind. Not because I'm strong, because I've removed the option. The student was confused. How do you remove an option? You sacrifice the person you were, the person who negotiated, the person who hesitated. When that person dies, what's left is only the warrior who kept his word. But Tishi's transformation didn't stop with training. Something much deeper had happened. And when people started to notice, they didn't say how impressive. They said this isn't normal. And that's exactly what you need to hear. Chapter 7. The Warrior Who Scare. 6 months after completing Shuyo, Tishi was sent on his first real mission, infiltrating an enemy castle to retrieve documents. The mission lasted 7 days. 7 days without adequate sleep, without sufficient food, without comfort. Everything that could have gone wrong did. But Tishi completed the mission. He returned with the documents. When the other shinobi asked how he endured, he said, "I did what needed to be done." But the truth was deeper. During those 7 days, not once did Tishi think, "I can't take it." Because that voice had long since died. In its place, there was only clarity, only action. The master called him over later. People will start looking at you differently. They'll call you obsessive. They'll say you're extreme, that you need balance. Do you know why? No, sensei. Because your discipline exposes their weakness. You are living proof that all the excuses they make are just choices, and that makes them uncomfortable. And the master was right. As Tishi's reputation grew, people's reactions changed. Some admired him, others feared him, but most reacted with something between discomfort and resentment. He's not normal. No one needs to be so disciplined. That can't be healthy. But Tishi had learned something crucial. When your discipline scares others, you're finally on the right level. Normal people get normal results. But warriors, true warriors, operate on a different level. A level where I can't doesn't exist in the vocabulary. One day, Tishi was training in the courtyard at 4 a.m. when a group of new students walked by. One of them muttered, "Man, that's scary." He never stops. Tishi listened and smiled because he remembered the boy he was 5 years ago. The boy who couldn't do 3 push-ups. The boy everyone called lazy. That boy was no more, and in his place was a warrior. No doesn't make you a better person. It makes you a different person. A person others will look at and think, "That's not human." And when you hear those words, you know you finally killed the weak version of yourself. Because you see, the system isn't complicated. It has 5 pillars. First, ketsui, the public oath. You stop making private promises that no one knows about and start making public declarations that change your identity. Not "I will try," but "I am." Second, the unchanging rhythm. You choose a fixed schedule and remove time as a variable. Your body learns the pattern, the negotiation about when disappears. Third, cutter, the perfect form. You do exactly the same thing every day for at least 100 days. No variation, no creativity, just repetition until the practice becomes automatic. Fourth, muku, practice without gaps. You never create a complete gap no matter what. Emergency reduced version, illness half practice, but never zero, because zero breaks momentum. Fifth, zini, prior preparation. You list every possible obstacle and pre-decide your response. When X happens, you do Y. No thinking, no negotiating. just execution. These 5 pillars transformed Tishi from a boy who couldn't do 3 push-ups into a shinobi who accomplished impossible missions. Not because he got stronger, because he killed the part of him that hesitated. And now I ask you, are you ready for this kind of transformation? Because I'm not going to lie to you. This path isn't comfortable. It's not easy. It's not for those who just want to improve a little. The NPO system will require you to sacrifice a version of yourself. The version that negotiates, the version that hesitates, the version that has 1,000 excuses about why today isn't the right day. And in that person's place, a warrior will be born. Someone who doesn't need cheap motivation, because cheap motivation is for those who are still deciding. A warrior is someone who doesn't break commitments, because commitments are part of identity, not part of a to-do list. People will look at you differently. They'll call you obsessive. They'll say you need to relax, that you're overreacting, that this isn't healthy. Great. That means you're on the right track, because the discipline that scares others is the only discipline worth having. The discipline that makes people uncomfortable is the only discipline that produces extraordinary results. The question isn't whether the system works. The question is, do you have the courage to commit completely? Don't try. Don't test. Compromise. Choose a habit. 1. Make your public pledge. Choose your fixed schedule. Define your perfect form. Commit to 100 days without gaps. Pre-solve every obstacle, and then watch what happens when you stop negotiating with yourself. Teki wasn't special. He was just a weak boy who decided to sacrifice himself so that a warrior could be born. You can do the same. If you like this video, I invite you to subscribe to the channel and activate the bell to receive future content. Remember, discipline is only bad when there is little of it. If you've made it this far, thank you very much for your attention. Until the next video.